We in New York have 58,000 truck drivers, good paying middle class jobs, over 270,000 people employed in the trucking sector. And to lose those jobs overnight to software would be a great disruption to those families and to New York's economy.
Well, Senator, first of all, we're talking about your bill S-7758. Can we start kind of broadly and have you just explain what the bill basically would do?
Sure. The bill would protect our truck drivers in New York State from autonomous trucking vehicles. So the bill simply says that any vehicle over 11,000 pounds that is autonomous must have a licensed driver in the cockpit, and that is primarily for safety, and it's also to protect our trucking industry and our trucking jobs. We in New York have 58,000 truck drivers, good paying middle class jobs, over 270,000 people employed in the trucking sector. And to lose those jobs overnight to software would be a great disruption to those families and to New York's economy.
You mentioned that this applies to trucks over 11,000 pounds. Are there any other requirements or restrictions in terms of which trucks it would apply to?
No, just anything over the weight limit. So basically, things above, smaller vans and those kind of things. But this would apply to long haul trucks, medium range delivery trucks, because we know there are companies that are experimenting with this technology. There have been pilots of this technology, and look, I believe that the technology is a good thing, and ultimately, this can be done safely. But we've seen both with passenger vehicles and with trucks, the software is confused by snow, by animals in the street, by children, and we want to make sure the public, the traveling public, is safe during this transition. So this bill is about public safety, and it's also about protecting jobs in the trucking industry.
I know that in all states, and including New York, that basically truckers have certain requirements they have to meet to have a commercial driver's license
Yep.
and to drive those large trucks. Is there any requirement or set of requirements being applied to the safety drivers that would be in these autonomous trucks under your bill?
Yeah, they would need the CDL. They would need to have the driver's class license for the appropriate vehicle.
Okay. Now I'm curious. You've mentioned that safety is part of this, not just the labor, but also the safety aspect. Why did you want to address trucks specifically as opposed to all autonomous vehicles? For example, in San Francisco, they've got a lot of autonomous vehicles essentially acting as taxis. And of course, those are valuable jobs as well. Why just trucks?
Well, for a couple reasons. One, in New York, there is a moratorium on vehicles operating autonomously. There are other legislators working in that space, and I work closely with our local Teamsters, and I was having breakfast with the business agent, and he raised this issue that this was a concern for them, that 58,000 truckers could be out of work in New York State in a generation. And so we got to work on the bill.
What sort of autonomous activity is taking place right now or is planned in New York? And I guess what I'm trying to get at is this bill addressing a current situation or a potential future situation?
You're right. It's the latter. It's a potential future situation. Right now, there are moratoriums on the public use of autonomous vehicles, both lightweight and the heavyweight. So this bill does not apply right now, but it could apply in the future, when it's deemed that the technology is usable, and the moratoria end.
You mentioned a little bit about this earlier, but I'd like to go into a little more depth concerning what the specific safety concerns you have with autonomous trucks. Can you kind of flesh that out with some more detail?
Well, you're talking about a vehicle that is several tons, and so there's not a lot of margin of error and forgiveness. And we've seen that some of the software, both in autonomous automobiles and in the heavy trucks, are confused by weather. They're confused by animals and children in the road. They've been confused by motorcycles. If there's not appropriate lines on the roads, in fact, I have a bill for that. In my district, we have a lot of rural roads that don't have fog lines on the right shoulder, which autonomous vehicles need. And so I also have a bill to require local municipalities to put that lane on there because we know one day autonomous vehicles are coming. So it's just until the safety issues are worked out, that we want to be sure that there's a licensed driver in the vehicle, that if something, God forbid, goes wrong, they can take control. Just like there are self-driving cars right now, you can program a Tesla to drive for you, but woe be the person who is not paying attention and sitting at the steering wheel with their foot next to the control. So, progress, but not perfection.
Yeah, and certainly we've seen a lot of incidents involving those Teslas across the nation, really, not in any particular state, and a number of them involving collisions with large trucks. So,
Yeah. So we want to protect jobs. We want to protect middle class livelihoods, and we want to protect the public during this transition. And that's the purpose of the bill.
I'm curious, in terms of your fellow legislators, what sort of support have you seen for this bill among them? Have you gotten a lot of co-sponsors or a lot of lawmakers telling you they support it?
Yeah, we have gotten a good deal of support. The reason we haven't moved the bill yet is because the moratoria is in place. So there's not an urgency to get it through the pipeline. But this is something that has a great deal of interest. It's the Teamsters' number one priority. In New York, the trucking fleet, not exclusively, but largely is unionized with Teamsters. So this is their number one priority in New York State. So they're focused on it. We're focused on it, and so are many of our colleagues.
You mentioned the Teamsters a number of times, and obviously this is an important issue for them as it is for all truck drivers. Are there other outside groups that you've interacted with, groups outside the legislature, I guess I should say, to be specific, about this measure and about the issue overall?
We have spoken to, when I do legislation, I speak to folks on both sides. I want to get everyone's opinion, whether they agree with me or not. We've had a few meetings with some of the autonomous truck makers, and they've been very cordial meetings. At this point, there's still the moratorium, so it's not a threat to the development work that they're doing, but they wanted to inform me as to what they are doing and the kinds of work and tests that they are doing. And it's been beneficial. It doesn't change where we land today, but I appreciate the dialogue and the input.
What stage of the legislative process is your bill at right now? Where is it? I mean, is it in committee? Has it made it to the floor?
It hasn't made it to the floor yet. It's in committee. So we are right now out of session. We're in session from January to June. And now everything's kind of in a holding pattern. And then this is an election year. So uh, we deal with that process. And then when we come back in January, bills go live again. And I think we have another 2 years on the moratorium in New York, so we've got a little bit of time yet.
Does it appear that there's support for extending that further?
It all depends on the negotiation. There's a complex negotiation between the automotive industry, the trucking industry, the software industry, labor. So this was a product of a negotiated agreement in New York, along with Department of Transportation. So this will all come up in the next negotiation.
You mentioned that you're in session January to June, and obviously this year's session is over. Will you have to reintroduce the bill for next year, or is it already on the docket, so to
No,
speak?
it's got to be reintroduced, but it's automatically reintroduced. So if we have existing bills, they're kind of automatically reintroduced. There's a process for that. And so, the off year is about getting legislation ready for next year, getting more support for your existing legislation, and working with constituents. So that's what we're doing now in the district.